he said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." In the name of God with us. Amen. Now, perhaps this wasn't the first thought that occurred to you earlier this morning when you first opened your eyes, but this particular late summer Sunday is known by some of us who follow the lectionary as Syrophoenician Sunday. One of the more challenging Sundays for those who try to follow Jesus. The Jesus we meet in Mark's 7th chapter seems to be the opposite of pastoral. Think of what we just sang together. He calls and claims us as his friends, where generation, class, or race divide us to our shame. He sees not labels, but a face, a person, and a name. So he's approached by a mother in distress, and his response is not seemingly callous or apparently callous. His response is callous. It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. He likens a desperate woman and her suffering child to animals. He seems to want to be rid of her, but she persists and she engages him, and he ultimately relents and heals. Now, like the Jesus of John's Gospel, who fashions a whip out of cords and in an apparent violent rage drives the merchandisers out of the temple, this is a Jesus who upsets many, a Jesus who confounds our notions of the Prince of Peace, a Jesus who sends commentators into rhetorical corners to defend and explain. Jesus is in a wealthy region, and the Syrophoenician woman was likely a woman of influence and means. Some have suggested, by way of explanation, the relatively poorer Jews he has been living among were his first concern. As James reminds us this morning, God has chosen the poor in the world to be rich in faith. Current anti-racist and feminist readings of this story cite the persistence of the Syrophoenician woman, and I wish we knew her name. They cite the persistence of the Syrophoenician woman as pushing the Son of Man into a necessary period of growth. A reading which others counter by citing Jesus earlier healing the Gerasene, a non-Jewish man possessed by demons. If Jesus is the Son of God, the Word made flesh, he cannot be taught. This line of thinking goes, he is no such thing as educable. In some quarters of biblical scholarship, there is a kind of hot insistence that to claim Jesus experiencing a teaching moment in Mark's 7th chapter is the equivalent of blasphemy. That he knows all in advance about his visitor and her daughter, that he has always intended to heal, that he is in fact teaching her by laying down a challenge, testing her response to it. Reading all of these perspectives on the Syrophoenician woman and her encounter with Jesus raises, for me, the great ideological and theological debates of the first few hundred years of our church. They persist, the big question being, who is Jesus? Now, many of these responses are interesting to me, but if you read too many of them, as I did on my vacation, you can't help but wonder if the commentators' pre-existing positions and perspectives aren't resulting in this perplexing episode being force-fit into context. Some years ago, I was taught a method of Bible study that I did not like at all. First, it was pitched at those people understood to be kinesthetic learners, those of us who learn by physical activity. How would you stage this scene? Our instructor wanted to know. She asked one of my classmates to arrange the rest of us in a sort of living tableau, to be the director. He, in turn, cast me as the Syrophoenician woman. He had me kneel in a corner of the room and stretch out one hand towards Jesus. The woman he cast as Jesus was made to stand in the middle of the room, half turning towards me. The rest of our classmates were bunched over in that corner of the room opposite my own corner. Some of those, in turn, but not all, were asked to stretch out their hands towards Jesus. "Freeze!" said our teacher. We had to hold that pose for a time in silence. "So what did we learn?" she asked after we had taken our seats again. She projected up onto a screen a number of Renaissance and 18th century renderings of this same scene, and more than a few of them resembled our own improvised tableau, mostly with a Jesus half turned towards the pleading mother. "Fully human, fully divine," offered one of my classmates. That phrase got us going. Fully human, fully divine. This is Orthodox Christian understanding of the person of Jesus. It's also a paradox because God, understood as perfectly good, perfectly wise, perfectly powerful, became a human, which in the Christian understanding of the term means burdened by sin, limited in goodness, limited in knowledge, limited in understanding. This paradox can only be resolved, submitted Søren Kierkegaard, by a leap of faith away from one's usual logical understandings of reality. And the precise nature of this mystical union, fully human, fully divine, the precise nature is called the mystical union for every good reason. It simply escapes us. Fully human, fully divine, the one we follow. One thing that does seem clear to me in this story is that both Jesus and the pleading mother are exhausted, fully human. Jesus is retreating to a faraway place, the region of Tyre, in what seems like a deliberate break from the frenetic, frenzied healing and teaching of weeks and weeks of hard work. What did he teach last week? You may remember, and he said, "It is what comes out of a person that defiles. For it is from within, from the human heart, that evil intentions come: fornication, theft, murder, adultery, avarice, wickedness, deceit, licentiousness, envy, slander, pride, folly. All these things come from within, and they defile a person, a human person, all human people." These energies are what emerge from us so often when we are hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. And those energies defile us, and they corrode our interpersonal relationships. Anger, indifference, and arrogance is what we show forth at those times. The woman has begged Jesus to heal her child, and what he offers is nothing short of a fully human response. Half turned, perhaps, as he speaks. Only half. Only half. Most of his weight on one foot, This is what my classmate understood. This is what painters of earlier times understood. Only half. To honor that only half of Jesus, that human half of Jesus, is not blasphemous, but I think a reason to rejoice. Love with us. Love come down. To image and to love a God as fully human and fully divine somehow makes his visible anger, his visible grief, and this morning his visible indifference worthy somehow of our thanks and rejoicing. He brings heaven to earth, the ancient wisdom offers, so that we may bring earth to heaven. To share all of our humanity is to save the worst of our humanity from becoming our fixed or ultimate meaning. I can't answer for myself this morning some of the most difficult questions our gospel presents to us. We can never countenance, for example, offensive speech from those in authority. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, but it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." To be fully human, perhaps inevitably, is to be born into a tribe, a particular clan. Let the children be fed first. He's talking about his own people. To continue, though, to live most fully, most humanely, and most divinely is to evolve over time beyond the confines and perspectives of that tribe. Ephatha, he says, be opened. My growth depends, wrote Evelyn Underhill, the great British mystic of the last century, on my walls coming down. My growth depends on my walls coming down. Ephatha, be opened. The divine in me, in you, in other words, has something to do with shifting our stance from one foot to another. Even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. For saying that, you may go, he replies. The demon has left your daughter. Well, you've got me there, Jesus might have said to the Syrophoenician woman in a contemporary rendering of the scene. Well, you've got me there. Good point. Now, does anyone speak that way anymore? Non-defensively? Without a glimmer of perceived threat? Maybe fully divine is fully defenseless. Almost certainly, these words will not be the tenor of this coming Tuesday evening's presidential debate. Good point. You've got me there. Could you imagine if each of these individuals offered those words to each other? Almost certainly that will not be the tenor of Tuesday evening's debate. But perhaps in the tenor and tone of Jesus and the Syrophoenician woman, we can hear something fully divine, worth imitating. So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone.